Welcome to the last episode of March of the PFF Forecast, March 31st. We have got a great show, an absolutely great show. Sage Rosenfels, coach of the QB Collective, former NFL quarterback, played under Kyle Shanahan, has some strong words about Justin Fields. He said them on Twitter. He's coming on the show today to talk about them. He's not going on any other podcasts, so you're going to have to get it here. And then Eric and I are going to do some win totals because they're out. We're going to do the NFC South. We're going to have the whole thing on Sunday. It's going to be a great show. Let's rock. All right. Sage is coming on, Eric. You've known Sage for a while, huh?
Well, he was the co-host with me the first time I ever did a live radio show.
Really?
Yeah. We did the Vikings pregame show, God, like 2 or 3 years ago at 1500 ESPN. The Vikings, of course, shit the bed as they are wont to do. So that is what always happens. But yeah, Sage was the quarterback, growing up in Minnesota. Sage was the backup, but he was supposed to be the starting quarterback the year the Vikings swooped down to Mississippi and signed Favre. So he got he was the backup for a bunch of teams. Then the Vikings traded for him to be the starter. And then he got screwed because the Vikings said, no, wait a sec. We want Favre instead. And then all the rest is history for him. But yeah, he's great. And he has a lot of great experiences. Yeah.
We're going to talk about them a little bit here to set it up. Obviously he's played in the NFL, 12 seasons, 5 teams. I messed that up in the beginning, but it's whatever. But has had an opportunity to also work with a lot of the younger quarterbacks in high school before they get to college. And that's where his experience with Justin Fields will come into play. Kyle Shanahan, a lot of these other coaches, as he'll mention, they go to those camps. They work in those camps. They've been there. They've seen these kids. So it'd be really interesting to hear his perspective on just this whole Niners thing, the players, the quarterbacks, and what he thinks about them. So it'll be really good. Let's not waste any more time. Let's get into it. Sage Rosenfels, here we go. It is our pleasure to welcome back. The last time we were together, we were in Miami. It felt like 5 years ago. Sage Rosenfels, thrower of footballs for 12 NFL teams, writer of words, speaker of thoughts. You can find him.
12 NFL teams, 12 NFL seasons.
12 NFL seasons.
5 NFL teams.
5 NFL teams.
On the right spot. I know I'm a journeyman, but man, that might be the record.
It's not quite Ryan Fitzpatrick. Fitzpatrick might be at 12.
Sage, did you know there's a YouTube channel called Backup Quarterback Highlights? And I got to say that yours and Matt Moore's length of video is the longest, by far. You have Colt McCoy and Chase Daniel, Colt 3-minute guys. And then yours are 10 minutes of you throwing bullets to Andre Johnson.
Colt McCoy just signed. So Sage, maybe you've got something left in you. Also, I should mention a coach of the Quarterback Collective, and we're going to talk about why that matters here in a second. You played under Kyle Shanahan in Houston, correct?
That is correct. My first year, I was there 3 years. Kyle was the receivers coach the first year. Troy Calhoun was actually sort of the quarterbacks coach coordinator, and he's been the Air Force head coach ever since. Well, then Kyle moves up to quarterbacks coach, and then on to offensive coordinator my third year.
So I think to set the scene, give us maybe a quick summary, an elevator speech. What's it like to play quarterback for Shanahan?
Well, everything you do has a really sort of exact, almost black and white rhyme or reason to it of how he has designed it, how he has come up with it. I think he uses sort of the science of the game, the deeper science that a lot of coaches just don't sort of get to, exactly how defenses work from a run game perspective, for responsible, and then what's the best way, really what with play action, with bootlegs, these different things, to then sort of fool the defense, to then sort of make the job of the quarterback much easier. So the play action plays, those are easy completions for a quarterback, and Kyle sort of took that knowledge that we were sort of building there when he sort of met with his dad / Gary Kubiak's Alex Gibbs' system. And I think he saw the ability to make these big plays with that zone scheme, that to me sort of changed, sort of everything. I think it's changed this league a lot. And quarterbacks, for the most part, have had a ton of success, whether it's preseason games or regular season NFL games, in that system. And they always run the ball well, and et cetera, et cetera. And so I just so happened to having, played for those. Matt LaFleur was quality control for 2 years when I was there. He could come from some small college, maybe Division II college, as an offensive coordinator, which I loved because he had called plays at this younger level. Now he had that responsibility. Now he was moving up to actually really learn this, and from Kyle. And so I saw that whole thing happen. I saw it when they went to Washington and Sean joined on, and then the rest is sort of history. And I'm also lucky enough to do some football camps where those guys show up to. And they show up to them, and that's the quarterback collective. And they show up to these camps, and we get some of the best quarterbacks in the country. We usually do it in July, and
formal invitation to Eric over here.
It's an invitation. Right. So Kyle did have a chance to see, and these other coaches too, some of these quarterbacks, and obviously we're in that situation. I know that's why you guys are having me on today to sort of talk about Justin Fields. And,
so let me ask you then, your reaction. You see San Francisco last week, they moved from 12 to 3. They trade 3 firsts. What was your reaction immediately when you saw that?
I was like, well, I'm sure it's to get Justin Fields. I haven't watched enough Mac Jones. I haven't watched enough Trey Lance to go like, are they really special? Like, is Mac Jones Tom Brady in the making? Right. Because that's what you're going for. You're going for this huge top end. And I don't know what the year was, about 4 or 5 years ago, when Fields was at our camp. There, I said, kid going to Miami, kid going to USC, this kid's going here. He was going to Georgia. Maybe he hadn't even committed yet. I can't remember, but he's going to his senior year. And to me, he was hands down the best quarterback there. I'm watching him throw seam routes, and I'm seeing that body and his strength. And also I get to relate to them, have conversations with them. Hey, can you do this? Can you do that? And I can't say one negative that I saw, right? Accuracy, how the ball comes off their hand. You can watch a lot of film, but until you actually see all that up close and personal, you don't really know what you're getting yourself into. So I don't think they have anything to do with each other. But as far as like Kyle and the camp and now, I don't know. But I do know that what he saw was a kid that just physically, but also some personality that I thought, as another coach at that camp, was going to be a top 5 pick someday. That's what I saw. Well, I see it with some other kids that are coming up that I see in high school now that are going off to these different colleges. I see these kids from when they're freshmen, sophomores, juniors in high school. And so there's just some where, to play in the NFL, to be great, you have to have some really special physical abilities to do what, Russell Wilson does, the way that ball comes out of your hand. And you can see that stuff at a couple of these camps that I go to, and I love it because I get to then sort of watch them go like, whatever happened to that guy? Or, oh man, that guy who I didn't really think much of now obviously is Mac Jones. Like, I didn't even probably notice him that much there because I was watching Justin Fields or these, some of these other guys.
He was actually busy getting a DUI, but
and Sage, the interesting thing for this Kyle Shanahan discussion was, we've always seen that Shanahan has preferred what people would consider sort of middle of the pack quarterbacks that he can sort of mold.
So this has been the argument that I have heard
Mac Jones,
Chris Sims and Dan Orlovsky both say, who I both highly respect.
But he's never gone after a young quarterback. I think
Hold
that's sort of the difference.
Hold on. That's ridiculous.
I've heard this because here's my issue with it though. You're never going to trade up 3 rounds in the draft to get Kirk Cousins.
He's never drafted a QB, right? So like the only QB he's ever drafted in my recollection, well, I guess they drafted RG3.
But supposedly that was Dan Snyder's pick.
Yeah. But then, the only quarterbacks he's drafted were low quarterbacks. Like, he could probably, claim Cousins in 4th round.
When
he
is
could claim
he have that
Beathard in
opportunity?
San Francisco. but like this is different, isn't it? Because he's always sort of made do with somebody else's quarterback, right? Like Matt Schaub, the guy that you played with in Houston, like he was the Falcons backup that they traded for when David Carr, like, failed for them. And he was sort of like he was kind of the Kirk of that time, Kirk Cousins of that time in many ways.
That is exactly right. Matt led the NFL in passing in 1 year, went to the Pro Bowl, won the Pro Bowl MVP. So it's sort of like, and he does the same thing with running backs. We go back to Mike Anderson for this conversation.
Steve Slayton.
How to maximize the running backs and the quarterbacks. He got the most out of me. I played for Norv Turner. I played for Kevin Gilbride. I played for Darrell Bevel. I played for Jason Garrett, Scott Linehan, Brian Schottenheimer. In my opinion, there's no disrespect for those guys, Kyle made me the best quarterback. His system and himself and the positions he put me in, and with Gary Kubiak and the whole thing, he made Owen Daniels into a heck of a tight end. Like they make these guys into really good players. And the teaching, I do think it's at a whole nother level. And I feel like I'm super lucky that I get to spend that time to learn some of those details, some of those things that set him apart from, the coach on the 32nd best offense.
So when you hear this guy fits Kyle Shanahan's scheme, what's your reaction to that?
That's a question. Like, is he average, but he can execute? Like I always said, Kirk Cousins is like an executor. And if you put him in the right position, man, he can tear it up, but he's never going to make you a play. He's never going to make you a play.
So isn't that French? Isn't that French for saying the scheme is great?
Well, the scheme makes a good quarterback really good, or an average quarterback good, or a bad quarterback good enough to, throw 8 for 10 in a preseason game for 40 yards, right? Like he just finds ways to keep it sort of simple, but I also add this great complexity to it. Like when I left Houston in 2009, I can't remember if it was like Rex Grossman or Leinart went there, and I saw him playing Grossman threw for like 296 and a half in a preseason game or something. Did not surprise me, because even I would throw up some good numbers in preseason games. And it was that system and that offensive coordinator, Kyle Shanahan.
So when you see the Niners now, they've sort of reached, Shanahan in general, right? So he's gotten to the Super Bowl with Atlanta as an OC. He's gotten to the Super Bowl and fourth quarter leads in both. And sort of seeing what a great quarterback, like a truly great quarterback, can do to sort of eliminate all the greatness that he's had in those single games. When I see the move up, when I see the move up to 3, I see him making an admission and saying, it's a lot of fun to turn Kirk Cousins into a $30 million quarterback. It's a lot of fun to turn Jimmy G into a Super Bowl quarterback.
Actually, I disagree with you. It's not as fun. It's harder.
Yeah. But it's a challenge, right?
You're trying to win the Indy 500 in a Chevelle. And it's just not going to happen.
But he's saying to himself,
not that Kirk Cousins is a Chevelle. That's not what I meant. But
that's what I heard.
I was a Chevelle at one point, and I was trying to, But if you can have a better car, you'll get around the track faster. And you look at the league right now, Pat Mahomes is that guy. I think Russell Wilson is in that conversation of a guy. I think Deshaun Watson, all the other things going on, but he physically and all the things that he's done on the field is like, wow, that guy, he is special. He carries the team on his back. Brady, in a weird way, is that guy because he knows everything and he just carves you up. He just can see it. And you do it that long, he's like a professor. He's just seen so many things. Yeah. And he's done so that's the thing you can't get. And Breeze was sort of like that too. You can't, that's where the knowledge just overcomes some of the things you lose in the body. But I think that what Kyle is thinking is you have to have an extremely high potential upside to make a 2.5 to 3 round trade, however you want to say it, to go get this kid. And I think personally, it's Justin Fields. That's what I think. I don't think it's because I've had any conversation with Kyle or anybody. I haven't. And believe me, they'll keep that thing close to the vest.
Yeah.
But I personally go, Justin Fields could be a Deshaun Watson type player, or maybe a Pat Mahomes type player, or maybe a Russell. I actually see him as a Russell Wilson comp. I don't know how you guys do all the comps and all these things. I see a bigger version, taller, but in a lot of ways of it, maybe not as like run around like Russell does, but he is a very accurate thrower, I believe. He throws a great ball. He throws a great deep ball. He can, I'm sure, get the ball on time. I definitely know was taught pretty well in college. I definitely know that he's been through a rigorous system, played a lot of games, won a lot of games, touchdown interception ratio. And these are not easy throws. This is not Josh Heupel going 40-5. These are like seams down the middle and post routes. What? And I think Kyle sees that. The New York Jets might see that.
Well, so this was going to be my question.
I really think they may end up with Zach Wilson.
Wilson or Fields?
I haven't watched enough Zach Wilson yet.
The Jets have just taken Penei Sewell. Kyle Shanahan is sitting there. He's got Fields, Lance, and Wilson. Who would you take?
And Wilson.
Yeah. So let's say the Jets passed on.
The Jets have passed on a quarterback, right?
Yeah. I'd probably go with Justin Fields, but only because, again, I've seen that. To me, that means something to me, that I spent that time with him. And I sat down with him one time during a lunch break and just started talking to him. He'd been to like 12 camps that summer. And I was like, man, I grew up in a small town of 300 people, went to no football camp. I don't even know what your world must be like. And I'm sorry. Because that's what they do. These kids are on these circuits. And I got to know the kid, and I was like, this kid, I think, is going to be.
Was he on time to lunch? Did he get there late and leave lunch early?
Sage. There's
pretty loose during lunchtime at a quarterback's camp.
Eric was going to mention this. So Dan Orlovsky said he has heard he's last guy in, first guy to leave, doesn't have great work ethic. You need a guy who wants to be great. You hear that. Your thoughts?
Do you think this is a team leaking it to Dan to try to get in a very uncreative way?
I'm not gonna go to speculation there, but I do know the person that was always the first guy in, the last guy to leave was the custodian. All right. And I'm tired of people using that phrase, because I wasn't an early riser and I didn't like getting there 3 hours before everybody else. But a lot of times I would stay later, or sometimes I'd go home and watch a little film. But, and I play with some of the best. All right. Brett Favre was not the first guy to get there and the last guy to leave. Are you kidding me? And Eli wasn't either. Eli and I went home about the same, and he wasn't there that much before me. Right. So it's like that phrase. I don't know his work ethic. I don't know Justin Fields' all those things. That's Shane Day and the Ohio State coaching staff and all that. This whole thing though is wild. I'm telling you, it has been the wildest. It is, what is it, March 30th or something? What is today?
31st.
All right. So this is what we're talking about. And this is the NFL. And this is why you guys also make money, because draft prep and draft conversation is a booming economy. This is like the perfect red meat for it.
Yeah. No, for sure. I think that we scoff at this a little bit, but football has certainly taken over March Madness.
I will say this. I think, and everyone knows the brilliance of Kyle Shanahan. Mm-hmm. And also, that doesn't mean he's going to win the Super Bowl every year. It doesn't mean he's even going to go to the playoffs every year. As we all know, like last year, there's all these variables that go into it. Bill Belichick got fired. And I don't think Kyle will I think Lynch knows we may not win for a while, but over time, Kyle's going to have a lot of really good football games. We got to find the defense. You got to find this quarterback, and Kyle will sort of do the rest with whatever he gets. And they're trying to find this quarterback. And it's a huge move, because as we all know, if Kyle Shanahan has a pretty good team, he can get a quarterback to play great. He can get an offense to play great. He can get a running game to play great. And that's, it means that whoever is going to end up in his spot. I mean, talk about a case of it's not when you get drafted, to where you get drafted.
Yeah.
And what this kid's future finances might look like because he got here instead of the New York Jets. Right. I mean,
that's been something
Justin Fields and I get drafted too. I'm like, can I go back to 3? Right?
Well, that's something we've said a lot, which is Kyle Shanahan not only can, I think, get the best out of somebody, if Fields is a bust, I think his floor is still high enough to be worth the third pick. Like, because if he's like Nick Mullins averages 8 yards a pass attempt for the San Francisco 49ers.
What is the thing? What is the knock from, all your statistics and all these things?
Good point.
And what from athleticism to passing to short to long to what we naturally see. 4.43 speed, by the way. Find me the knocks on this kid compared to the knocks on Blake Bortles back in the day and what he was doing at his school. There aren't very many, I promise.
I heard Blake Bortles was first guy to and last guy to leave a party. So I'm just saying. But this was the one knock, and I'll have you respond to this. Blitz, his time to throw against the blitz increases. His blitz pickup, his kind of understanding of where to attack the defense, what is the defense pre-snap, have been things that we've identified as his kind of weakness and things that have come out there. Is that something that you've seen, or has he improved in that? And how would he continue to improve?
I think a lot of college offenses, from what I see, you can hold the ball so much longer than college. And they run a lot of these concepts and they run them over and over and over again. And they're just sort of plays that attack various defenses and occasionally have a guy go here and occasionally have a shallow route here. And they're these sort of read it across the field plays. And I think those plays they're almost impossible to run in the NFL. And I think that style changes to more coverage based and understanding coverages more, because you get so much more time. It's just, that's where college and pro game is sort of different. I watch my Iowa State Cyclones and they don't do a lot of like, hey, single high you're working over here, two high you're working over here. There's all these complexities going on to it. But in the pro game, it's just sort of different that way. And because you have to get the ball out faster, because there's Daniil Hunters coming after you left and right. Every team has some freak of nature or three of them on the other side of the ball. And so it's just so hard to hold up front. So that then changes. So to me, was he accurate, right? And leave the teaching to Kyle to create a system that works best for him. And also how he thinks. Everyone thinks differently. Everyone thinks like we all see football the same. Good coaches aren't talking about just the physical things they do. It's actually how their brain can operate to sort of maximize their overall abilities. And everyone has different processing methods to do that. And good coaches sort of find the things that make the most sense for that player based off of how they see them play. And I think Kyle does that as good as any. I was a high school sort of option veer bootleg quarterback.
Really?
6'4", 188 pounds. I promise. I mean, I was scary out there.
An athlete.
But all in a basketball player and a baseball. So all of that bootleg stuff in high school, I think really helped me, especially, in those preseason games, whatever, when Gary Kubiak went looking for a backup quarterback in 2006. And, I'm very thankful for that bootleg game, but the bootleg game has been very good to Sage Rosenfels.
It's also probably why David Carr didn't work in that offense, because he had years of just bad training the previous, before Kubiak got into Houston. I mean, he got sacked like 80 times a year.
You have no idea that when we walked in there, and I'm not going to get into I don't know who the coaches really were before, but it was a tragedy that was an NFL offense, because we watched some of the games sometimes, but just to see their tight ends had like this tight end, she'd go into that offseason, like, who are these new guys on the team? So-and-so tight end, 4th round draft a couple of years ago, he had 1 catch last year. That tight end had 3 catches last year. They threw their total tight ends. Mark Bruner was our mating tight. He was like an 8 catch a year guy. That was it. They didn't use the tight ends. They try to block everybody and throw it deep to Andre Johnson. When
they couldn't protect.
They couldn't protect. So now all of a sudden we get in this Kubiak thing, and we're out there and there's guys wide open. But the jump from that offense to Kubiak's offense / Kyle's offense it's like a different stratosphere of detail that I think that, again, I feel very fortunate that I was lucky to be a part of and to learn the basics of it.
Sage, we appreciate you taking some time. You're a friend of ours. Come on anytime and talk football. We'll have you. I should mention, in addition to the 5 NFL teams, 12 NFL seasons, speaker of thoughts, teacher of the football, you apparently also a stand-up comedian and vocal magician, a singer. I've been trying to find this cut that apparently exists of you doing both stand-up comedy and singing a debut single. I hope to have it for the next time that we have you on.
If you can find it, I will sit here and I will watch it because I've never seen the video of it, but it is out there. I got to do a quick comedy tour with two comedians, and it was a great time. And then a hurricane sort of cut it short. But there is a tape out there of me singing a Whitney Houston song with as much passion as I could get out. Yeah, on stage awesome. In front of people.
We're going to find it. We're going to put money on the total length of it. It'll be a whole thing. Sage, thank you for dropping some knowledge, and we appreciate you hanging out with us, buddy.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on.
Special thanks to Sage. We didn't get into the Miami stories, Eric.
Look, he had a heart out at what day, 3:55 or something like that. So we had to accommodate that. So we stayed really on point here. But yeah, the stories with him are great. As our friend Matthew, who worked with him at 1500 ESPN for a few years, can attest. It's pretty fun.
Yeah, maybe the next time we get him on, I'll recount the story that we have from Miami that he may or may not remember. I'm not sure, but it's a good story. What was your reaction to hearing him talk about Fields, about the Niners, about Shanahan?
Well, I think it's interesting because he certainly talks about, I would say, elite potential quarterbacks differently than he would talk about a normal Shanahan quarterback, himself included, right? He always talks sort of about the Cousins and the Jimmy G's and the Matt Schaub and like sort of in this group where, and I think I misspoke, but like Shanahan sort of likes the challenge of getting greatness out of them.
I knew what you were saying. Yeah.
And whereas, he talks about Fields as sort of having that potential. And I think what's really interesting, and he said this at the end, and we've said this, I think, a little bit, where Zach Wilson might be the better prospect of the two. But if Zach Wilson goes 2 and Justin Fields goes 3, I think Justin Fields has a better outlook in his career because the floor for him is so much higher. Whereas with the Jets, it's like Wilson might become the next Joe Namath, but he could also become the next Browning Nagel. Like it's just
Sam Darnold. Yeah. No, it's a good point that you made. And this was something that I was going to ask Sage, and I'll have this discussion with you. We can talk about it because I'm sitting here and I'm looking at, a bunch of different people's big boards, and I'm watching Justin Fields look like a Greek god that can also throw a football over a mountain. In his pro day, he was sensational in college, all these things. And you then think about what Kyle Shanahan may want to do. And you go back and you listen to some of the comments that he's made about, for example, the read option and about how it opens up a scheme for you to throw the ball and how it's so hard to defend. And you look at these quarterbacks and go, well, you're not doing that with Zach Wilson. We know how much Kyle Shanahan loves the run game and loves to have his scheme, as Sage put it, like a deeper science. Like he thinks about how his offense works on a different level, right? He's thinking about what is the defense going to do and how am I going to kill them? And I'm not sure.
It's interesting, by the way, that that's how some coaches. So I was on the phone a couple weeks ago with Mark Trestman, who used to be the head coach of the Bears.
I know who Mark Trestman is, yeah.
And he was saying I was like, well, what are you looking for in data? And he goes, well, for me, it's about whether or not they're executing their steps. And I'm thinking like the precision that a lot of these coaches think in is not necessarily conducive to a quarterback who is able to sort of improvise and stuff like that. Right. I think, don't you agree that the next real challenge for Shanahan is going to be how he does with a player who has sort of like off script sort of skills?
No.
Okay. So you have faith. You have faith that he's just.
Let me put it this way. I think we're making mountains out of molehills about the fact that these are the quarterbacks he's had in the past. Okay. He's never had an elite athlete as a quarterback, unless you go back to RG3. He's been dealt with your run-of-the-mill, your average NFL quarterbacks. And the fact that he's been so good as to make them look really good is a testament to his scheme. Am I worried now? Would I worry about a player that comes in and doesn't listen to Kyle Shanahan? Yeah, of course. But that's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about.
Well, that's what Dan Orlovsky's talking about.
Yeah, but Dan Orlovsky is out there. He's on the streets of Cincinnati, you know, doing the things that we told people in the last episode not to do.
By the way, we need to be. I need to be a little bit less critical of him. I think there's something having to do with the media, sort of the teams trying to use the media to possibly alter the draft order. I wish that the teams, if this is true, and he could just be saying what he thinks, and that's bad. But to me, if you're an NFL team and you're trying to get a guy to fall, be more creative. Stop talking about the guy's character. Like, say something like,
but hold on,
you know what I mean?
On. Can I say this for a second? Like, and I actually, Mina Kimes, who we both respect with the utmost respect, spoke very highly of Dan Orlovsky. And so I do think Dan Orlovsky's a good guy, but I have a huge issue with saying things like that and not providing, you know, you got to give a little more there. You can't be like, oh, I heard this. You know, that's why working in the news is so important. Because if you just wrote about everything you fucking heard, like, it would be a shit show out there. People lie. There's reason for people to lie. He's from Georgia. You know, Trevor Lawrence also. Like, there are people that have different reasons for doing different things, and you never know what they are. And so,
and you're paid, by the way, as an analyst to synthesize the information. You're not a what. You're not the print on the newspaper. You're the so what. So if you say stuff like this and then you say, well, I'm just reporting the news, like, that's not actually what you're being paid for. You're being paid to synthesize it. So if you say, like, if you preface it with, I don't necessarily think this is true. Here are some counter examples, like him playing with 7 broken ribs against Clemson and winning by 3 touchdowns. If you sort of come back with that kind of stuff and say, look, this is what some people are saying. This is what the evidence suggests is true, which is that he dealt with adversity in transferring from Georgia to Ohio State. He wrote a petition to the Big Ten to get the season back on when they were trying to cancel the season. He played through broken ribs in both.
And played well
in both, by the way. And this is the other thing. Zach Wilson has done everything right, but you know what he didn't do? He didn't play. He didn't even come close to playing in the college football playoff. Justin Fields played in those games, both of them with severe injuries, when all of us, none of us, would ding him one bit if he sat out those games to stay healthy for the NFL. And he played those. And so, again, to your point, George, I think you're 100% correct. If you have that platform and you're giving voice to things like that, it is your job to provide the other side of the argument. Otherwise, you're just, and you know, shame on if the person's giving them that, shame on them for not being like, if it is a smokescreen, they got to be more creative, because don't ding somebody's character just because you want to draft him.
No, I agree with you. And I want to back this up with data here. He had a 93 PFF grade against Clemson with broken ribs everywhere. Amazing. Now, the Alabama game, people go, oh, yeah, they got the shit kicked out of them. And they did, as a team. Justin Fields played – go back and watch that game. Justin Fields finished that game with an 85 PFF grade, right? Like, sometimes the final score is your biggest enemy in evaluating how a player has performed. And, yes, I know he didn't play well against Northwestern. I get that, right? Like, he had a bad game. But I am going to make the argument, at least. I'm not saying that I would do this necessarily, but I think there's a solid argument to be made that Kyle Shanahan would take Justin Fields over Zach Wilson and or Trey Lance over Zach Wilson, because he believes that having a running option at quarterback that is also accurate. Justin Fields, incredibly accurate, gives him something that with his scheme could be unstoppable.
Yeah.
I think that he hasn't had, quite honestly, he has not had before. And you look at Andy Reid, who was making magic with Alex freaking Smith, and he goes, look, Andy Reid is being crowned as a wizard still, and he's got the best fucking quarterback in the league. So give me some of that.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just be upfront. I think, like, Zach Wilson's statistical projections, even after you account for everything, like who he played and all that stuff, they're better than Fields currently, and that wasn't the case prior to the season. So this past year, Wilson did enough, in my opinion. He's also athletic enough, right? So, like,
Okay, but hold on. You're not running Zach Wilson on 10 designed runs in a
No,
game.
of course not. But I can, if I'm Shanahan, I can run the tradition. I can run what has been Shanahan's offense prior to this year with Wilson.
Mm-hmm.
I do think a running option certainly opens up a different dimension that we have not seen besides the RG3 year. But you're right. I mean, look, Shanahan could very well shuffle the deck chairs, and I'd trust him vis-a-vis his own offense. I do think that you can make an argument that the distribution is wider for Wilson, which should help a team that needs to get out of a rut like the Jets, right?
Mm-hmm.
So maybe Wilson's a better pick for the Jets than Fields is, but I don't think that they're that far away. And I certainly don't think that now we talk about the betting markets. Wilson's minus 1,000 to go second. So I think he's basically a lock to go 2. I don't think that this widening gap that we're seeing, at least in perception, is warranted at all, even if I do think Wilson is the better of the 2 prospects.
By the way, maybe Kyle Shanahan just listened to our podcast where we talked about Mac Jones going under 17.5 being a stone cold motherfucking lock and goes, I like those guys. I'm going to help them out a little bit.
Yeah,
okay. I'm going to go to the pro day. I'm going to make sure that Mac Jones is now is it below 9.5 now?
I think it's 9.5. I haven't even checked. I did see, by the way, Jamar Chase minus 400 to go be the first wide receiver. So, continue to eat the
closing line value. Look, you're going to feed your family
draft, but
you're going to feed your family Easter dinner and it's just going to be closing line value on the table. The last comment I was going to make is that saying that I think Kyle Shanahan may have Justin Fields ahead of Zach Wilson is me kind of connecting some dots, which is like, I don't want to tip my hand. I sure as hell don't want Matt LaFleur and Saleh, not Matt LaFleur, but his little brother was Mike LaFleur. And Saleh to go, oh, you know what? Kyle likes Fields. Maybe we should like him too, But I personally am with you. What Zach Wilson can do throwing a football. Remember, Mahomes is great because of what he can do throwing the football. Everything else is ancillary, right? You talk about how good of a running quarterback he is. It's not because they design runs for him. It's because he's so mentally intelligent and athletic. So I want to make sure that's correct. That is
I
stated.
think the best outcome for the league is Lawrence, Wilson, Fields. I don't think there's any, if you want the league to be as fun and as optimal moving forward, you want Lawrence on the Jags, you want Wilson on the Jets, and you want Fields on the 49ers. To me, we come out of April, and Pitts on the Falcons. Let's just go Pitts on the Falcons.
You're going to go Pitts on the Falcons? Okay. I was going to ask you that
I'm
question.
going back and forth. Obviously, Chase would be great, but I mean, when you're talking, you can't go wrong. The only reason I now think Pitts is the better pick is just the positional scarcity. He might be, and this is always stupid to say, but he might be the 4th best tight end in football
right now.
Yeah.
But I don't, is that supposed to be impressive?
Well, if you're getting, if
he's not 3rd, then I don't want him. Okay. If he doesn't come into the league, if Kyle Pitts is not immediately the 3rd best tight end, I don't even want to think about taking him. He better be in Kelsey Kittle territory by the end of his rookie season.
I think Waller, Kittle, and Kelsey have a claim to be,
Okay.
I think after that, all bets are off, which when you're talking about Jared Cook this year made one year 6 for LA Chargers. Pitts is not even going to make that, basically going to make that much money in a rookie cost control. If Jared Cook goes to LA and catches 80 balls for 1,000 yards and 10 touchdowns, he's making $12 million the following year. If Pitts does that in year 1, the Falcons are going to say, well, you got your year 2 on your rookie deal here, buddy. That's the great thing about this cost control stuff. When Mahomes threw 50 touchdowns, the next year he had to make year 3 of his rookie deal. If Andy Dalton throws 50 touchdowns for the Bears, he's going to the counter and saying, I want Kirk Cousins money or something like that. That's the value. If you can get that kind of player, let's say Pitts comes into the league and plays like Travis Kelce, and you have cost control on him for 3 years plus an option. it's a pretty, like, again, I think Chase is also in the conversation, but like those two guys in the Falcons would make what we're going to talk about next an absolute stone cold lock for me.
I agree. I can see where you're going. And I would say with Arthur Smith, his ability to make the tight end a weapon where that confuses the defense from a personnel perspective makes me okay. With the Pitts, I do think Chase is the better player. And that's why when it comes to the Bengals and everyone's going to go, they got to take a tackle. They got to take a tackle. Look, you'll be just fine with an average tackle.
I mean, they got Riley Reef to play left tackle. Like,
if you don't have elite receivers, you are doing Joe Burrow a disservice. Did you see? I don't know if the Bengals watched Joe Burrow at LSU. Maybe they did. I would guess they did. Did you see who he had catching passes from him? Like, he had elite wide receivers at the NFL level. In college, to me, it's Chase without a shadow of a doubt. And
I want to ask you one question. Who was the left tackle for LSU that year?
You don't know. No one knows.
I don't know either.
Thank you.
Like, I have no clue.
And here's the thing about that. If that's how it goes, you know who really gets screwed? The Dolphins trading back up from 12 to 6.
Our friend Ben Baldwin messaged me and was wondering about our take on that. I think we are both of our stances is that second trade was negative EV by itself. Mm-hmm. We're choosing to look at it like a full one trade, but at the same time, like, the only thing, so I backed off that a little bit. The only thing that makes that second trade meaningful is if that sixth pick could possibly be used to trade for another team who's desperate for a quarterback. I do think if they trade that pick and go back to like 9 with Denver or 8 with Carolina, and I do think they'll end up with more than if they just stood at 12. Like, I think that'll end up being the case. And if you take a chance on that, like, I think you're buying an option there. And again, if they stay pat and take like the third best of Chase, Pitts, or Sewell, then I don't think that second trade up was worth it. But if you can trade that, the mere fact that you can probably trade that pick to a desperate team for Mac Jones, Trey Lance, or possibly Justin Fields, to me makes the conversation a little less black and white, even though that trade was, as Timo calculated and as we agree with, negative EV.
You said it all. Okay, we're going to do some win totals. Our Sunday show is going to be dedicated completely to win totals because they are out on DraftKings Sportsbook. We're going to tease it a little bit. We're going to talk NFC South because we did just talk about the Atlanta Falcons. There's really no other place to start. Our season begins and it ends with the Atlanta Falcons. So here are the numbers. They are up on DraftKings Sportsbook right now if you want to go check them out and bet on them. Tampa Bay, 11.5. Again, 17-game season. Tampa Bay 11.5, New Orleans 9, Carolina 7.5. Each of those minus 110 to both sides. Our Atlanta Falcons 7, minus 143 to the over, plus 118 to the under. So really adjusted, it's about 7.4, basically the same as Carolina, a little lower. And I'd like to start off by just saying, how dare Vegas just slap Atlanta in the face like that.
Well,
I mean, that is disrespectful.
I said with the 16-game schedule, I did say 6.5, which is basically what you're seeing.
Yeah.
The way that they were painting the division odds, they were going to come in low on the Falcons. And I'm telling you right now, we simulated the season. Now we don't have all the information, George, but this is the first PFF forecast pick of the 2021 offseason.
We're contractually obligated.
We have the Falcons going 7 or more wins. This is crazy. I mean, we have this over. We have it about 63% of the time. So you got to take it, I think.
I've already taken it. I just think a couple of things. I've said this before. I'll reiterate it very quickly. They're getting a huge boost from an offensive scheme perspective. And if you think about what drove Matt Ryan to an MVP season, he hasn't like become a worse quarterback. His opportunity to make positively graded throws was so enhanced by Kyle Shanahan's system. Arthur Smith is not going to be quite that, but he's going to bring a lot of that back. He has Julio, he has Calvin Ridley. He brings in, now a lot of players are not going to contribute year one of a rookie. But you know who we have seen contribute year one as rookies recently have been pass catchers. And I think that is you can legitimately think a Chase or a Pitts is going to contribute, year one, especially in that offense. And that to me is just enough. You look at that offense and you go, how many wins should this offense have just with an average defense? It's 9. Now I know there's some falconiness that gets put in there, but like that's disrespectful to put them at 7 in my opinion.
Well, and there's a couple other things. There's Carolina we're not sure about.
Mm-hmm.
Like think about the range of outcomes for the Panthers. You either have Teddy Bridgewater, who is not going to be favored in a game against Matt Ryan. Matt Ryan, the 6th most valuable quarterback in the NFL, using PFO4 the last 3 years. The last 3 years, by the way, all losing seasons for the Falcons. I don't even need to clump 17, which was a good year for him, and 16, which was an MVP year. He is, over the last 3 years, the 6th most valuable player in football. No matter what, you throw Breeze out of there. This is part of the argument too. He's a top 5 quarterback in terms of value. You have him, right? You have the Panthers are not going to be favored in either game, whether it be Bridgewater or a rookie quarterback, by the way, which is the other side, which should have Panthers fans happy for the future, but would not have me fading the Falcons in 2021. New Orleans has Jameis Winston, who we like Jameis, but he's not going to be favored in a game against Matt Ryan either. So you have 4 division games, which were last year probably 1 and 3, right? You were favored at home against Carolina, not on the road, and you were not favored in either New Orleans game. Now you're 3-1, let's say 4-0 maybe. And then Tampa, who again is another team. The Falcons have a 17-0 lead on the Buccaneers at home at halftime during the Bucs win streak that concluded with the Super Bowl. They were playing with that team. If you get normal regression out of the defense, look, Arthur Smith's Tennessee Titans defenses were no better than this Falcons defense.
Fair.
I'm sorry.
They were horrid, actually.
And they were painted last year at 8.5, 9 as a win total. That should be the comparison when you look at the Falcons. It should be to the Titans, who are now playing, weirdly, in an AFC South type division in the NFC South with Breeze retiring.
It's a really good point. Ryan Tannehill went from Adam Gase to Arthur Smith and turned into one of the most efficient quarterbacks. In fact, they were the most efficient offense on first and second down when throwing the football. Matt Ryan has been languishing. Matt Ryan's let me put this out there. Matt Ryan is a better quarterback than Ryan Tannehill. The stats haven't said that over the past couple of seasons because of what Ryan Tannehill has had from an environment perspective. That's going to change dramatically this season.
There's also the fact that the Falcons have put significant draft capital in the offensive line, and as the aforementioned Timo Riske has documented, offensive line is the toughest position to acclimate to in the NFL. So when you're looking at offensive linemen who have struggled since being drafted by the Falcons, there's a chance that they emerge and become at least okay. And again, in Smith's system, what looked like trash under Dirk Cutter might end up looking like treasure under Smith. Again, we're looking at, to me, a 7 flat. I know you're paying some juice to bet the over. To me, it's just you can't not.
So let me ask you this: do you think, because you look at the numbers, and do you think the fact that there's 17 games and people will see the numbers and they'll go, that's interesting. They won't account for the 17 number of games total and well enough. And that'll actually change people from always betting overs. People love overs, to being a little more on the unders. Do you think that'll happen or no?
Maybe. I mean, most of the time an under is a good play, in all these, and because you have a tie every once in a while, like last year we had one tie. That I think contributed. The Bengals went under their win total, I think, because of a tie. Maybe they were 1.5 games below. Eagles also. Those are games that are thrown out, right? So those add up to more than 272 anyway. And when you throw a tie or two in per season like that, that makes under such a good play. But I think I think people have been burned by the Falcons for a long time. It's why last season, the Browns, who you look at all the indicators, we're a playoff ready team, and no one wanted to touch any of that, because you saw it year after year after year. It was like the boy who cried wolf type of thing. I think that's where the Falcons are currently. But that's just where there's value in the marketplace.
let's run through these other teams because we paid a lot of attention to the Falcons. Let's do a minute on Carolina. I'll start here. 7.5. I do think that they will draft a rookie quarterback, and this is, I think, a little rich for me. Like, I'm not ready to go ahead and say Carolina is going to win 8 games. If I had to take one side of this, if they have Mac Jones, for example, I will take under 7.5.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think we have 7.5 as our projection. So I certainly think that number's fair. I'm not going to be betting it.
Yeah, I'm just picking a side. I agree. I wouldn't bet it. New Orleans at 9. What are your thoughts on that?
This is one I was, talking to you privately. I think like we're just struggling right now, not knowing exactly who the quarterback is. Our number is more like 9.5, but we have a strong prior on Jameis. We have a strong prior on Sean Payton. We have a strong prior on that roster in general, even though it's lost a lot of pieces. This is one where the numbers say bet over, but I would probably still not bet it.
I'm with you. And if I were forced to, if a gun was put to my head, I would probably go under. I probably would. I just think there's a lot of regression on that team coming. And I don't know that Winston gets off to the greatest start. There's going to be a little bit of pressure on him. Tampa Bay 11.5. This is actually lower than I thought it would be. What were your reactions to 11.5?
Yeah, the Chiefs are the only team with a win total above the 11.5. They paint 12. I think I would bet under on Tampa here. I think we have it going under about 64% of the time. Tampa's for one, they're an NFC team, right? And we talked about this on Sunday. NFC teams have to play their 17th game on the road. Which didn't affect Tampa last year in the playoffs, but obviously, road games are a little bit, going to be harder this year than I think they were last year. And a lot of things went right for Tampa. They had the best WAR per dollar spent at safety, quarterback, wide receiver, all that kind of stuff. And there's just going to be regression there, I think. And 11.5 is a lot. It was the same argument with Baltimore last year, right? It's just, you have to go under a number that high for a team like that.
I do see your point. You could not get me to bet on Tom Brady winning under 11.5 games with an offense that I think, look, they might have Antonio Brown back, but I think that offense is really deep. And Brady played so well last year. So I'm not saying that this is something that I'm going to go out to bet, but if I were forced to, like, I think about the Patriots, this division, not particularly strong. We just talked about that. The Patriots, when Tom Brady was there and just running things, we're not as talented as this team, and we're continually pumping out, 12, 13 win seasons. So with the extra game, I also thought they got off to such a bad start last year. I think that will color how people view of them. I think defensive regression is going to happen, but I actually think their offense will be better this year than it was in totality last year. So, but I agree. I think it's a no bet for me. We will be back on Sunday. We're going to talk about all of the other divisions. It's going to be a lot of fun. Thanks for hanging out. Appreciate Sage Rosenfels for coming on. Make sure you go subscribe at pff.com. Get yourself a draft guide. Get ready. We're only a month away, baby. We're in April now. So let's get it. Eric, peace, brother.